chapters 11 and 12. So we're gonna get right into it. Hope you're enjoying. Chapter 11. Our evening meal arrived right on time. I mentally added up the days and sighed, realizing it had only been about 4 days. It seemed longer. You have to let go of Stella's hand if you want to eat easily. I chuckled as Jay and Stella let go of each other instantly. Right you are, Dave, Jay said, trying to play it cool. You're supposed to let them suffer until they figure it out themselves, I told the boy, as Jay stuck his tongue out at me. It's part of the learning process. I winked at Stella, who chuckled. Jez, I swear to the gods, one of these days I'm going to kill you. You'd better hurry up, then, I teased. Yeah, he said, waving his spoon in a vaguely threatening manner. Then he looked at Dave and aimed the spoon in his direction as well. You too, you rascal. I'm also watching you. The boy grinned. Don't you just love living on top of each other? He asked innocently. Stella and I burst out laughing. You're all nuts. All of us? Stella asked, voice just a bit on the dangerous side. They are. Of course not you. Real smooth, Jamesy. Shut up, you. Stella fought a smile. I suppose I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. I feel the intense need to say get a room. Shame you can't, I said mournfully. Jay threw the spoon at me, which I easily ducked, as sore as I was. That reminded me of something, though, and I carefully stood as I tossed it back. I grimaced, already stiff and sore. You sure you want to do that? Jay asked, concern coloring his voice. Yes, I said tightly. If I wait any longer, I won't be able to move for a week. I'm moving fine. Nothing personal, Jay, but I think he hit me harder than you. All three were smarting after what happened last time. My legs wobbled but held my weight, and I carefully stretched out the best I could before returning to the ground with a groan. Okay, that hurt. Idiot, I made a face at him. But I still like you. Gee, thanks. Dave yawned, cuddling up to Stella before peering cheekily up at Jay. Am I taking your space? David, Stella said, but her rebuke was ruined by the fact she couldn't help giggling. I hate you, Jay informed him before deliberately curling up with his back to us. I wasn't particularly tired yet, so I stared where I was, eyes directed out the cell door, although I let myself not focus, mind rolling over recent and past events in my head. Finally, I drifted off. I woke with a start as pain ricocheted through my body, something connecting harshly with one of my new bruises. I pulled my head off the bars from where it had dropped sometimes during the night and looked up. Standing on the other side was Rees, looking inordinately pleased with himself. Good morning, Jasmine. I've had better, I said flippantly. Truth be told, I'd never been much of a morning person. Each their own, he replied, undaunted by the fact I was glaring at him. Can you stand? I shrugged, minimizing my movement. Possibly. Since you woke me, you should be able to tell I haven't tried this morning. Why don't you now? Because I'm rather comfortable right here. Thanks all the same, I said, keeping things casual. Rees ruined that. That wasn't a suggestion. He nodded to his right, and upon peering past him, I spotted my 2 favorite burly guards. I sighed, and, using the bars, carefully levered myself to my feet. It wasn't pretty, and was quite painful, but I got up all the same. There. Happy now? He grinned with what I could only identify as sheer glee. I suppose so. Then he leaned in. So, it would appear we're even now. It would, I said, not sure where this was going. I figured I'd give you a couple days to recover before we had another round with me winning. Don't want to bruise your ego too hard too quickly. I let out a laugh. Fine by me. Far be it for me to tell you what to believe. He smirked. Stay cocky now. That's fine, but it won't last. We have all the time in the world. Think what you like. I leaned carefully against the wall and folded my arms. Rees opened his mouth and then paused, look going a bit more wary. Jay's hand landed on my shoulder. Morning, Colonel. Jay, he said with a nod. Did you want something? Just to talk to Jasmine. Since you have, can you leave now before you stink up the place any more? Rees's expression darkened. Heal up, Jasmine. Jay, perhaps you might want to hold your tongue next time, or I'm afraid when we meet again something might get broken. I'll be visiting you both soon. With that, he turned on his heel and strode off, brutes trailing him. Sit, Jay told me and helped me down, which I was grateful for. My legs really weren't a fan of being used. You really shouldn't bait him like that. Got him to leave, though, didn't it? I couldn't argue with his results. Now there is one who could use a heck of a lot more beauty sleep. I snickered. On the outside, Rees actually wasn't bad looking, sadly, and probably only in his late 20s, but I agreed with Jay's assessment anyway. I'm not sure all the beauty sleep in the world would help him. Did my beauty sleep work? He asked, striking a pose. Absolutely. You're looking as gorgeous as always. He winked at me as the guard with food arrived, like he'd been waiting for Rees to clear out. Jay leaned over to wake the Harpers while I pulled the bowls and utensils to the center of the cell. I hadn't even put down my empty bowl before I realized Dave's eyes were glued on me, as if he might miss part of the story if he looked away. I was just glad I could distract him. No need to ask. I'm there. I set my bowl down, took a brief pause to figure out where to pick the story up, and then started. By the time 2 months had passed, the freedom fighters had swelled to their pre-battle numbers through new recruits and were fully settled in at the new Cavern Hall. Not only that, but their network outside had tripled. They now received frequent communiques from all the larger towns and cities, as well as reports on all the troop movements of the 3 soldiers and the 3 themselves. Most of this was thanks to the member of the network named Call, who had appeared right after the takeover in Beijing. Riley passed Bo a paper. Sounds important. He looked amused and took it. Jez, meanwhile, crumpled another paper and threw it into the growing pile as she adjusted her position to make herself more comfortable. She had her legs resting on Bo's desk with her chair tipped back slightly. Jessie sat in one of the other chairs, bent over a particularly long message, reading closely. Rai hopped up, grabbed another pile, and then settled back in against the wall, legs crossed. Bo paced the length of the room as he weeded through the messages the women passed him. You get more papers than we should be humanly allowed. Think of the trees, Jess said. They're trees put to good use, he retorted. Both ignored the look Jessie and Rai exchanged. Used to them. Good use. Uh-huh. Like this one. Everything is calm, awaiting instruction. She snorted. Real useful. Bo rolled his eyes at her. Of course it is. Now I don't need to worry about whoever that is. Aren't we hoping we don't have to worry about most of them? Shouldn't they only send messages if we need to worry? Whatever Bo might have said was stolen as one of their newer recruits burst through the door. Sir, he hesitated at the sight of the 3 women, and then threw all 4 a salute. Master Mick says there's been reports of 3 scouts within a mile of Cavern Hall, sir. Bo reached over and snagged a rolled-up map, flattening it on top of his desk. You, he said, pointing at the recruit, go get Duncan Kramer. As soon as the man disappeared, he turned to the map. Thank the gods we've got a bigger space here, he said to the trio as they gathered around. We should be able to stay hidden given that and the extra precautions we put in place. Jessie, Rai, I need you to alert the guards to make sure all the entranceways have extra protection. Then, make sure everyone is inside and accounted for. The 2 nodded, and Rai tossed an absent salute as they hurried out the door. Jez, I need you to find Iris and get her to gather our young and old and get them to the hiding place. She knows where. Then, actually, can you grab Reardon and Mick first and send them here? He flashed her a quick grin. If Iris gives you any trouble, let me know. With pleasure, she said, and took off. She met Mick halfway to the main area where Reardon could usually be found. Sir, Bo, I figured, Mick said, patting her on the shoulder as he went by. It wasn't hard to locate Reardon either, his booming voice echoing through the entire cave system. She waved to get his attention and immediately set his assistant, Nathaniel, to teaching and came over. Yes, lass? He asked. Bo wants you. The 3 are looking for us. His expression turned grave. Okay, thank you, he said, before looking at his students. Class dismissed early, he bellowed, waving away any questions, and hurried towards Bo's office. Iris was a bit harder, but Jez found her a few minutes later just leaving her classroom. If anything, the large woman's dislike of Jez and the others had grown. Rai attended her classes only 3 times a week at Bo's orders, and Jessie usually forced her to do some learning outside of it anyway. Not only that, but Iris learned that Jez had spent the better part of a year at only 18 without ever attending lessons. Jez repeated Bo's orders and got a disgusted look in return. If the captain wanted me to do this, he would have sent someone responsible, not one of you. Ma'am, Jess said levelly, I've put up with your bullshit for an entire year, and I'm pretty damn sick of it. I'm here to help just like you, and just because Bo and I are also friends does not mean you have any right to doubt my authority when he sends me on an important errand. If you have a problem with this, we can talk about it later, or I can throw you outside for the 3 to find right now. Your choice. Iris raised an eyebrow, expression never flickering. Think you could follow through on that? I'd figure out a way? Absolutely. The woman snorted. Then off you go. I've got a job to do. She cracked her knuckles and stomped off, leaving Jess to stare after her, not sure what to think about that brief confrontation. She shook herself and headed back to Bo's office to see how else she could help. She reached the doorway and paused uncertainly. Bo had his back to her as he pointed things out on the map to Reardon and Mick, the 3 highest-ranking people in the camp. She felt a twinge of nervousness as she realized how much time she'd been spending with Bo, and she had to wonder if she was taking him away from his duties. In the 2 months since the battle, Bo had slipped into the 4th place in their little group. Jez forced the nerves away. If Mick cared or didn't approve, he certainly wouldn't be shy about letting her know it. She smiled as she watched Bo point at something and looked to Mick for confirmation. Mick studied it, then nodded, saying something too quiet for her to hear, but she could tell Bo was smiling. Hello, Jez. You can come in, you know, Mick said, spotting her. She blushed and slipped into the room, glowering at Bo for his amused smile. Okay, I think that about does it, Bo said, winking at her. Mick, take west, Reardon east. I'll take south, and Reardon, I don't know where that recruit went, but grab Duncan and send him to watch the north. Jez frowned, opening her mouth, but a look from Bo silenced her. Mick glanced between them, shook his head, and followed Reardon out of the room. I could easily take the north, she burst. Bo stared at the map and refused to look at her. Bo. I know you could, he said quietly, but the risk. The risk? God's breath, Bo, of course there's a risk. Living in a gods-be-damned risk these days. You know I can take care of myself. He cringed, shuffling some papers around the desk. She softened. Look, I appreciate it. I appreciate you care enough to worry, but you can't protect everyone in this business, Bo. He finally looked up at her seriously. I know. I just wish I could. They stood silently, eyes locked. Okay, go tell Duncan you've got the north. And be careful. She smiled quickly. I will. You'd better follow your own advice as well. She took off towards the northern entrance of Cavern Hall, running into Duncan halfway there. Hey, I'm taking over for you, she said. But Reardon said, Duncan started, but Jez cut him off. Bo changed the orders, I promise. Okay, he said easily. Jez knew he had a large and still growing respect for her after the way they'd escaped thanks to her quick thinking, but she wasn't sure she wanted it. Let's get you out there, then. The two slipped out the doorway, listening hard. A minute passed before Duncan nodded. It seemed they were clear. He then handed her a satchel of food and water and gave her a boost up onto the first branch. She climbed the next one and swung up, climbing with relative ease. Not only had she climbed plenty of trees with her brothers as a child, but Bo had also made everyone practice for just this eventuality. She reached the platform Bo had ordered constructed and pulled herself onto it. He's a genius, she muttered, not for the first time, as she took in the platform. The bottom looked just like a tree branch wrapping around the trunk from below. The design mimicked some of the most populous local trees, so it wouldn't look the least bit suspicious. She dropped to her hands and knees and crept forward until she could see Duncan. She shot him a thumbs up, even if the height made her stomach twist. He returned it and disappeared back inside. Jess scooted against the solid reassurance of the trunk and let out a breath of relief. Luckily, the platform was between 2 and 3 feet across, which gave her some room to maneuver without getting too close to the edge. She crossed her legs, then cringed when a rumbling, followed by a thump, signaled that she was locked out of Cavern Hall until someone came back for her. It quickly became apparent it was going to be a long wait. The woods were surprisingly quiet. Although if soldiers were tromping around, Jess didn't blame the animals for hiding too. She drifted into thought, only snapping back to the present when she heard a noise that might need investigating. The afternoon slowly stretched into evening, and Jess chewed on a simple meal of biscuits and dried beef. Evening gave way to night, and she began to nod off. She checked the area and then stood and stretched out all her muscles. She then mimed a few of the sword moves she'd worked on first with Bri and later with Jessie and Bo, not daring draw her sword and potentially create a reflection. It was almost fully dark out, and she was sitting again, thinking, when another sound drew her attention. She carefully dropped to her hands and knees and inched forward, peering out. Nothing moved, and then one of the shadows detached from a tree and slid forward into a faint pool of light. Even as weak as that light was, the form was still identifiable as a man. She scooted around so she could see the stone that marked the hidden entrance to Cavern Hall, and watched, pressing herself flat against the wood. The man appeared a moment later, feeling along the rock and peering into every fold. He passed by the door without a pause, and she grinned. Complete success, she thought, with no little satisfaction. She watched for a few more minutes before the shadow disappeared in the opposite direction of Cavern Hall. She waited for a 30 count and then sat back against the tree trunk again. Now, fairly certain the rest of the night would be silent, she let her thoughts truly drift, especially wandering to those lost to her, dead or alive. As morning dawned crisp and clear, her thoughts shifted to her current friends. She stood, stretching out cramped muscles from the odd position she'd forced herself into overnight to stay awake. She finished off her last couple biscuits, suspecting someone would come and retrieve her soon. Then, she sat back and listened to the sounds of awakening wildlife, the birds singing their morning songs, and various animals making their way through the growth beneath her. She relaxed, feeling reassured by the usual forest noises. A frown crossed her face as she abruptly realized that she rarely relaxed anymore, and only when she was either alone, which was rare in the tight quarters, or just with her friends. She tried to remember her exact conversation with Duncan the previous afternoon and figure out if she'd been rude to him. She kept interactions with the others to a minimum and short. Am I too afraid that if I make a friend, I'll lose them too? She wondered out loud. She debated this, trying to be fully truthful with herself, and arrived at the conclusion it was true. Mentally, she told herself it was time to open again. That Bri, of all people, would be appalled at her shutting down. Jez, you awake? It was Duncan. In her musings, she had totally missed the door opening. Yeah, I am, she said, and on my way down. She slipped the satchel through her belt and carefully reached down to find the next branch. Be careful! I will, she said quickly, before remembering her mental promise. Sorry, Duncan, she said. Just tired. No problem. To be expected, he called up cheerfully. She carefully climbed down before hopping the last couple feet to land at his side. So, he asked. I got a visitor, and he passed by the door without any hint of identification. Qualified success. Duncan let out a whoop and pumped the air. Jez grinned. My thoughts exactly. She yawned. I better go report to Beau before I fall asleep standing up. Of course, he said, falling into step beside her. Jez knew she should apologize, so took a deep breath and did so. He eyed her. For what? For being really short with you and almost everyone else here. I realize I've been really closed off since the battle, and you've never been anything but nice to me, starting my first day. Duncan shrugged. Trust me, you weren't that bad, and we all figured you'd snap out of it soon enough. You went through a lot 2 months ago, and sometimes these things take time. I think, of all the people in the world, those of us here understand that better than most. Still, that doesn't make my behavior acceptable. Very well then, apology accepted, forget about it, and play nice from now on. She laughed despite herself. See, this is what I mean about being nice. I just can't help it. Anyway, I am sorry. Not a problem. He waved her into Beau's office and then headed off cheerfully, probably to spread the good news. Beau's head rested on his desk, and she was fairly certain he had to be out cold. She quietly took a seat and stuck her feet up on the desk, inches from his head. What did I tell you about sleeping at your desk? She asked, with mock severity. His head jerked up, and he looked around before he focused on her. Oh, it's you. Who else would it be? He yawned. Don't know. Someone nice? He asked, poking her feet. She grinned, dragging them off. Aw, I thought you'd like them, she said, with a yawn of her own. Like your feet? Why? She shrugged. Why not? I'll admit, I'm a little hurt you didn't. I'm not exactly what you'd call a foot person. Jess stared at him. I can't believe you said that, she said finally. He thought about it. You're not the only one. You know, you're actually fun to talk to when you're half asleep. He glared sleepily at her. Are you insinuating I'm not fun to talk to when I'm wide awake? She adopted a perfect, Bri-like innocent expression. Oh, ha, very funny. You going to give me a report or not? Oh, right. I saw a man. He felt all around, including near the door, and never paused or looked twice. I'm positive he was fooled. She stifled another inopportune yawn. I think you're just trying to change the subject, though. He attempted to look dignified, but failed considering he was still mostly asleep and his hair jutted in every direction. She reached over and patted it down. Thank you for the report and good work. What am I supposed to do now? Salute, say yes, sir, and wander off to bed? That would be nice. Then I could go back to sleep myself. But that's no fun, she stretched, leaning back in the chair. He dropped his head back onto the desk with a dull thump. I don't want to talk to you anymore. All you do is make fun of me, so I'm going back to sleep. Do we need to restart this conversation? Jess said, trying to figure out how inviting it looked to do the same. He lifted his head just enough to peek out one eye at her. Not if your feet are going to come into it. Both of them yawned, almost in concert. We should really get some sleep. I'm going, she murmured, pushing herself up before sinking back into the comfort of the chair. Perhaps I should just stay here. It's kind of comfortable after all. So do I get to tease you about it now? She waved a hand in her direction as she dropped her head on his desk. Sure, go ahead. Both of them sat in silence. What are you waiting for? She asked, cracking an eye open to look at him. He peeked it back up at her. It's no fun making fun of someone when you're just as tired as they are. I hereby withhold my teasing rights until a more opportune time. He glanced at his bed. We really shouldn't fall asleep here, he said, making an attempt to rouse himself. Jez didn't bother. Our friends would never let us live it down if they found us like this. Why don't you use the bed? Because there's only one. You need one too, she replied, quickly fading now that her head was cradled in her arms and she was halfway comfortable. That's fine. I've slept in worse. I wouldn't be able to sleep in good conscience if you were sleeping here. She glanced over at his bed, which, like everyone else, was a slightly nicer than average bedroll, and squinted. You've got a big one. Perks of being the captain. Then that makes it easy. It's big enough to fit both of us. Her brain told her that the logic there, and the embarrassment factor, was skewed, but if Beau was thinking the same thing, he was too tired to debate it. Jess slithered out of her chair and went over, flopping on it, asleep over almost instantly. Beau was a bit more cautious, but couldn't resist, making sure to leave a little bit of space between them before falling asleep too. Jez recognized the dream almost immediately. It always started the same way. Bri was there, yelling charge at the top of his lungs. The entire group surged forward, drawing her along with them, despite the fact she knew how it would end. Bri, no, come back, she yelled, fighting towards him. Every time she got close, a new enemy popped up in front of her. Finally, she could see his back as he fought a soldier. She sprinted forward, but he went down. Jess stumbled to his side and dropped, abruptly realizing it wasn't Bri at all, but Beau's face staring up at her, unseeing and bloody. This was not how her nightmare was meant to go, though. She jerked backwards, stomach in her throat. The scene around her froze, and then it fell back into action, and it wasn't just Bry or Bo. It was also Jessie and Rye, Duncan and Mick, even Reardon and Colin lying in front of her. No, please, no, somebody help, please, she started sobbing. Jez, wake up. She knew she recognized the voice, but the context was all off. She woke slowly, disoriented from the dream and blinded by the very real tears that had translated out of her sleep. She fought her confusion, despite the fact someone was holding her tightly and rocking her back and forth. Usually, when she had them, Jessie or Rye would wake her and sit with her until all of them were calm enough to sleep again. Nightmare? She managed to focus on the person who held her. Bo? Right here. What's wrong? Jez leaned against his chest, feeling surprisingly safe and comfortable. How this? She gestured aimlessly around them. As far as I can tell, we were drunk on lack of sleep. I'm sure you'll remember once you wake up a bit more. He gently wiped her tears away. We both fell asleep on my bed. Well, that's rather ridiculous, she said, laughing slightly. I teased you about my feet. And I told you I wasn't a feet person. I remember now. She made no move. So, what's it about? He asked softly. A reoccurring nightmare since the battle. Usually it's a replay of the battle, which is bad enough, but tonight I didn't just see Bry dead, but everyone. You, Jessie, Rye, my brother, everyone. She swiped at her eyes. God's breath, Bo, that can't be the future, right? She asked desperately. I can guarantee it isn't. How? Simple. I have absolutely no intention of dying. I doubt Bry or the others we lost did either. They can't and won't get all of us. We could fail. We won't. How can you know? Because we're smart and dedicated and we know what we're doing. Add to that the fact that we're gaining new recruits almost daily. We've not just replaced our numbers from the battle, but actually increased in size. He grinned crookedly. Anyway, if we were all dead, you would be too. Oh, that's so reassuring, she retorted, but smiled. He shrugged. It's true. Yeah, she said, yawning as she settled more comfortably against him. So don't worry. You're not going to lose me or anyone, I promise. Good, she murmured, eyes closed, as he continued to rock her gently. Thanks, Bo. You're very welcome, Jasmine, he whispered as her breath evened out. He gently lay her down and covered her with a blanket before settling beside her again, letting just their shoulders touch. Something bounced off her head, then something else. If you don't stop that, she's going to kill you, and I won't stop her. That was Bo. Someone giggled. Jez forced her eyes open and blinked owlishly just in time for another balled-up piece of paper to bounce off her face. She glared sleepily at Rylia. Her friend whistled innocently and pretended to be very interested in Bo's desk. Then she aimed it at Bo and Jessie. Maybe I'll just kill all of you, since I see no one stopping her. Bo grinned. Glad to see you more rested. She sat up and ran a hand through her hair. What time is it? Just about dinner. Bo suggested we wake you up so your internal clock won't be totally screwed up. Ah, makes sense. What are you three up to? I'm reading the latest batch of messages. Who knows what these two are doing? Rye smirked. I'm playing with the rejects. I hadn't noticed, except for the fact they all made their way to my head. The younger girl giggled and balled up another one. Jez raised an eyebrow, just daring her to throw it at her. Instead, Rye bounced it off Jessie's head. Jessie immediately snagged another and threw it right back. Jez couldn't resist scooping up one of those that had hit her head and throwing it at Rye. This resulted in an all-out war between the trio that only ended when Jez realized Bo was entirely ignoring them. This, unto itself, was not new, but she was fairly certain this was the same message she'd picked up when the paper war started. Jez caught one of the papers and then held up her hand, turning to Bo. What is it? You know Carl? He was previously in Beijing? Of course. Wait, he moved? Jez asked. Yeah, his message before this said they'd relocated to Greensward, but he apparently spent the last week in Oakbridge observing the three. He offered her the message. He's got an interesting perspective on the trio. He also warns that we should watch out for Anika, that she's apparently going to, according to rumors, try and infiltrate us. That should be easy enough to guard against, Jessie said, accepting the paper from Jez and scanning it. Who is Carl? I'm not sure of his, or her, I suppose, exact identity, but they've been nothing but reliable. There's at least two of them that write under the same pen name, but I consider that handwriting to be the real Carl. He writes far more often and seems to get around, while the other only writes about local politics and rumblings. Interesting. Jessie handed it off to Rye. Bo sat back in his chair. I have to wonder why someone would do what the three have done, he said, which was a topic change certainly, but Jez could follow. She shrugged. We might never know, but I agree with you. I kind of wish we could know. It doesn't matter why, Rye said, because it was still wrong no matter how you look at it. None of them could argue with that. Annie hummed to herself as she stepped into Vlad's office, a rather grand room that fit all three siblings comfortably. Anika, she froze a step inside the door, sensing as much as heard something off in Vlad's tone. He'd also used her full name. Yes, she asked cautiously. I'd like to congratulate you on a job well done with everyone's favorite prince. I don't know how you did it, but the important question is, will he marry you without a fight? Annie stared at her eldest brother. Anika, Soren prompted, and as she turned to him, she thought she caught something like pain dart across his face. I don't know. We didn't talk that far. Which wasn't entirely accurate. Instantly, she was glad that every word they'd exchanged hadn't been overheard. But he admitted he loves you, Vlad pressured. Vladimir, Soren said sharply, we have what we want, so leave it alone. I'm not making him like me, she said shrilly, feeling like she'd been punched. Vlad waved a hand dismissively, a new habit these days. Doesn't matter. What matters is that he agrees soon, without many conditions. Conditions? Annie echoed, for lack of better thing to say. Yes, we need him to peacefully become a figurehead, and if we have to bribe him, so be it. Think you could hurry up the agreement? Annie stared at him. She'd known, in a distant sort of way, that there was something wrong, but there was always something wrong. This, however, went above and beyond the usual. She glanced at Soren, but his expression was disturbingly blank as he also watched Vlad. Maybe I don't want to hurry it up, she said flatly. Why wouldn't you? It would work to everyone's advantage. You get the prince, we get the country for good. But, she started, not even sure what she wanted to say. It didn't matter because he cut her off. But nothing, Annie. Don't be difficult. Once Patrick's younger son sees his brother is on the throne again, he'll back off. That's not true, she protested, even as she filed that interesting tidbit away for later thought and discussion with Ren. It's not? Vlad's voice dipped dangerously. No, of course not, she said, purposefully lightening her voice. The clueless moron act always worked on Vlad. It's obvious that Rennie's brother is smart, so we'll be able to figure out pretty quickly we're just using him. All of us? Soren asked carefully, rejoining the conversation. Her gaze darted to him, concerned she still couldn't read his face, especially since recently she'd been able to again. All of us. I have to go work, she said, more loudly than she'd meant. It took another 10 minutes before she could extract herself. She paused outside, trying to calm herself. Vlad had shocked her, and Annie felt even more unsettled about life than usual. Her conversation with Ren just an hour earlier kept replaying in her head with an overlay of Vlad's almost accusations. She knew she needed to talk to Ren, but Soren had beat her off the door, and she suspected his first stop was Ren's room, although we might say it was a complete and utter mystery to her, as most things Soren did these days. She bit her lip. Never had it been this bad, especially since Edward had died. Annie felt the usual doubts creep in, and she fought them and the accompanying tears down. She did not cry. She leaned against the wall, childhood memories inching in at the thought of her father. She swallowed hard. Memories of Edward's fists and the words and the endless nights and how close they'd all been and how Edward had forced the change and now they were holding together by barely a thread. The memories swirled through her mind and she sunk to the ground, covering her face and squeezing her eyes shut. Over the years, she'd gotten very good at compartmentalizing the past, shutting it away, but when it came out, it happened with a vengeance. She wondered if Vlad and Soren struggled with the same issues. Annie? What, Vlad? She asked, voice muffled by her hands. What are you doing on the floor? Nothing. Nothing? It's nothing, she said fiercely. Are you okay? Yes. She listened for his footsteps but didn't hear them. Vlad. Yes? Go away. Again silence. Is this about Ren? That didn't even deserve an answer. You're going to run to him and make a fool of yourself again, aren't you? He doesn't really love you. You don't know that. Do you? She bit her lip, still not moving her hands. No, she didn't. He'd only said it was possible, not certain. It was enough for her, but now she wondered, was Ren playing her? See, I know people, Annie. They don't always mean what they say. You don't believe in love, do you? No. She caught her breath. At all? She whispered. No. And that's why we will ultimately fail, she said, standing, but not looking at him. We will not fail. Of course we will. If we weren't already in trouble, you wouldn't need Ren. It's why we need a figurehead. It's why people don't trust us like they trusted King Patrick. Don't call him that. That's what he was. She brushed past him, heading for Ren's rooms, Soren or no Soren. You're running to him. Yes, I am, she said, spinning to face her brother, because I do believe in love, and I have faith in Ren that he's telling me the truth. There's no such thing as faith, either. Says you. Damn it, Vlad, Edward sucked, there's no doubt about that. But I've also looked around the world and seen all the people who had great, good childhoods, loving families, who fell in love. I want to be like those people. He snorted derisively. You helped us take over Tira, Anika. You will never be like those people. Of course not. I have dreams, but I'm not deluded. My family sucks, but my future doesn't have to. She turned and started off again. Vlad's voice, as cold as she'd ever heard it, stopped it dead. I think you need to analyze where your true feelings lie. Then make a decision and either throw yourself on the mercy of those people or start helping Soren and me with all your heart. I do support you and Soren. I always have and I always will, she said quietly without turning around. But you're not all there is to my life, much as you might believe otherwise. If you can't accept that, she let her sentence hang and turned the corner. A minute later, she reached Rennie's room, slowing as she listened for voices. Upon hearing none, she strode up to the guard. He looked surprised at being acknowledged by her. I'm supposed to talk to Rennie without anyone listening in. Make sure it's done, please, she said cheerfully, not wanting to make him suspicious. Yes, ma'am, the man said, saluting and stepping across the hall out of hearing range if the door was shut. Annie slipped inside, pulling the door shut behind her. Wren stood with his back to her, clutching the bars on his now open window. Wren? He glanced back at her thoughtfully. Hey. She stepped in a bit more. What did you and Soren talk about? He pursed his lips, turning fully to face her. I'm not entirely sure. What did you talk to your brothers about? If I can convince you to marry me with only a couple conditions, she said quietly. What did you say? Not much, she admitted, wrapping her arms around her middle. I don't know what to say. I didn't want to get either of us in trouble, and Vlad was so insistent. And Soren? He didn't say much either way before beelining it here. How do you not know what you talked about? He didn't say much. I think he was testing me somehow, so I mostly listened. She searched his face. Wren, are we? I don't know. She stepped up to him, grabbed his face between her hands, and kissed him firmly. I love you, she said, holding his gaze. It's okay if you don't love me back, but I need to say it. I need you to know that nothing my brothers do or say will change that. She held his face, although he made no move to get away. I know you can't lie when you're looking someone in the eye, so tell me right now that you're not playing me. That the chance we talked about earlier is possible and not sullied by anything Soren or Vlad might have said or might say in the future. He reached up and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. I promise I'm not playing you, Annie. I meant what I said earlier. He bit his lip, eyes darting across her face. God's breath, Annie, he said and huffed out a laugh. As fucked up as this situation is, I think I love you too. Her entire face lit up. Really? Really? You just make the whole world brighter, and yes, you drive me up a wall sometimes, but the gods help me, I like it. Annie finally let go of his face, dropping her hands, but he caught one, gently entwining their fingers. We need to get you out of here, she said. Excuse me? We need to get you out of here. Yes, I heard you, but I can't let them use you like that. You'll be safe away from here. You can hide with the freedom fighters until our base crumbles enough, and then you can come be king for real, like you're supposed to. She hesitated. And I'm afraid what Vlad might do when he finally snaps. Neither spoke. What about you? I'll be fine. Annie, Rennie, no matter what else happens, they're my brothers, and I've made my bed. I don't want you to get hurt. Drop it, Rennie, she said frostily, the whole conversation edging too close to the past and the memory and the distance. He looked taken aback by her tone and started to nod before horror skirted across his face. Aren't we being listened to right now? No, I told them I had to talk to you privately. What if they came back? Rennie, I might be a bit nuts, but I've still got some power around here. They left and stayed gone, trust me. What about Vlad? And Soren? He added Soren almost as an afterthought, which made her all the more curious about what they might have talked about. She left it alone for the time being. Vlad's concerned about me and my infatuations with you, but doesn't think I'm capable of plotting. Soren just doesn't care. Or, she added silently, if he does care, he's too damn good at hiding it. Okay, then how am I getting out of here? She smiled crookedly. No idea. Then we best get planning. Chapter 12. I smiled as I took a break. Sorry about that. I just kind of got going, didn't I? Quite all right, Stella said. It does help the time go faster. I think that was the moment that I realized it was time to really move on. I'm not sure I'd quite figured out that I liked Beau, and I certainly didn't know he liked me, but it was a turning point nonetheless. I have a question, Dave said. How do you know the little bits of what people said when you weren't there, like when you were injured? Most of it I learned after Bo and I stopped being blockheads, and Jesse and Rye felt they could share. Some of it Bo told me later. Depends on the tidbit. Dave nodded, then took advantage of the break to hop to his feet and strain his neck to try and see anything out of our small window, which I estimated to be about street level. The corridor definitely sloped down towards the cell. I'd noticed it both times I'd gone to chat with Rees. I forced myself to stand as well and carefully stretched out bruised and stiffed muscles. This time, I heard the footsteps first and tensed, glancing out the door. I dearly hoped Rees wasn't back for more. My body wasn't ready for further punishment yet, and he said it would be a couple of days. But the man himself sauntered into view. "David," Stella whispered, and the boy backed to her while I heard Jay get to his feet behind me. "Good afternoon." I felt a little reassured by the fact he only had one of the brutes in tow. "Afternoon," I said as Jay stepped to my side, effectively blocking his view of the Harpers. The last thing either of us wanted was him taking an interest in them. Rees looked between us. "Keeping yourselves entertained?" "Yep. People watching." "It's weird, though," Jay said. "We only seem to see assholes." I bit my lip both to keep from smiling, and because as funny as it was, I wished Jay wouldn't. "Then perhaps you need a new hobby," Rees said without batting an eye. "Probably. What do you think, Jasmine?" Jay said with barely any hesitation. "Should we take up knitting?" "Only if the good colonel here would provide us with the supplies." "I don't think giving the pair of you knitting needles would be good for my health." Good point. Probably not. What about painting? I've always wanted to do landscapes." Rees smirked. "Anything I can do to make your stay more comfortable?" "Go away?" I suggested. "I would, if you'd just answer my questions." "You know we can't do that." He appraised me freshly. "Can't. Not won't. Interesting." My cheeks heated, and I cursed myself for not being more careful with my word choice. "Same difference," Jay told him. "Both apply." "I'm not so sure. I think Jasmine said exactly what she meant, which just reinforces the idea that you're part of the freedom fighters." "Think what you like," I said. "Far be it for us to stop you." This was not the first or last time I suspected I'd say exactly that to him. He tilted his head. "I thought the freedom fighters were inordinately proud of the fact they were members. Anyone fighting against the three should be proud of it. Rumors have it that name originated with them as well." "Heard the same thing. Can't argue with accurate simplicity. Seriously, Colonel, do you really think we're going to just slip up in casual conversation and say, yes, we're with the freedom fighters to satisfy you?" "It would be nice." "Not going to happen, and I think we all know it," I said. He inclined his head. "Very well. I will talk to you tomorrow, Jay." "Can't wait." Rees gestured the brute ahead of him and headed off, radiating smugness. "God's breath," I murmured as soon as he was out of hearing range, leaning against Jay. "We really need to watch every word we say with him, don't we?" "Appears so. He's quick. Too damn quick." I let out a breath. He put an arm around me. "We'll be okay. If he's monitoring every last word, maybe we can use that to throw him off track." "Maybe." I reminded myself of our cellmates and pushed off him, carefully sitting back down. Dave's eyes were wide and worried, and Stella only now drew her gaze away from where Rees had stood. "If he comes after us," she started. "He won't," Jay said, and I suspected we were thinking the same thing. At least not yet. "How do you know?" "Colonel Rees wants to break us badly. As long as he continues to get snippets from us, purposeful or not, he'll keep at us." I shifted to settle in more comfortably. "Shall I? We've still got the rest of an afternoon to kill." "That would be great, Jez, thanks," Stella said, with a relieved smile, putting an arm around Dave's shoulders. It was a testament to how nervous Rees made the boy that he didn't protest or squirm away. I took a deep breath, trying to expel Colonel Rees from my mind, and continued. The next month flew by. Someone had apparently gone looking for Bo and seen the two of them sleeping together. Needless to say, rumors were flying everywhere. Jez did her best to ignore them, but Bo blushed every time someone mentioned it, which, of course, Rye did at every possible opportunity. Although new information came in every day about the three and their movements, the area where Cavern Hall was remained almost suspiciously quiet. People began to get edgy and jumpy at the silence, so Bo decided a morale boost was in order. Against Mick's better judgment, and maybe his too, he put Jez, Rye, and Jesse in charge of it. He started to agree with Mick's thoughts when, 2 days later, Rye skipped into his office, followed more sedately by Jez and Jesse, while he and Mick talked. The first thing he noticed was each expression. Riley's face was painted with a wicked grin, Jez's eyes twinkled with suppressed mirth, and Jesse obviously tried not to laugh while attempting to look apologetic at the same time. The second thing he noticed was that Jez held something out of sight behind her back. "Hello?" he tried, as Mick kicked his foot in a not-so-subtle, "Told you so." "Hi, Bo," Rye sang. "I want it noted that this was not my idea," Jesse added. "But she's not complaining either," Jez told them. I think we can safely end the conversation right there, Bo said. The answer is an absolute no. Aw, come on, Bo. You haven't even heard what our proposal is yet. We're only doing our job. I honestly don't think that matters. It's still no. Hey, you said we could use any resource we could find as long as it did not get in the way of Cavern Hall's operation. Did I? Yes, actually you did, Mick said. We were all present. Bo kicked Mick back with pleasure, but his old friend just smiled, obviously amused. Well, I'm not a resource to be... He paused. Okay, bad argument, but the gist of it stands. At the girl's hopeful look, he sighed. Okay, fine, I'm not agreeing to anything, but what's the proposal? The fact that Rye instantly started to giggle gave him a large sense of foreboding as Jez finally produced the object from behind her back. It took him a long moment to both identify and then recognize it. God's breath, he said, fumbling it as Jez threw it to him. Mick and Jessie, gods damn them, were both laughing. No way, he said, holding out the offending object from his hands. In his hands was a two-piece outfit, if it could even be called that. The top was a skimpy shoulder wrap, while the bottom was a distinctively skimpier bottom, both made of animal skin. It was the same thing that appeared on Bry in Jez's birthday present picture from Jessie and Rye. There is no way I will ever wear this. He dropped it on his desk and folded in his arms in an attempt to look intimidating. Unfortunately, his friends knew him far too well to be fooled. Oh, really? Jez asked, looking very assured of herself. Why do you want me to wear it anyway? He asked cautiously. We're doing a play. The gods help us, Mick muttered. Bo kicked him again. And we want you to play Vladimir. His jaw dropped. Excuse me? What kind of play is this? A comedy, Jessie said, speaking for the first time since the outfit had appeared. It's a two-scene play about the three. Rye's going to be Anika. I think we convinced Reardon to play Sordin, and we want you to play Vladimir. And what about you two? I'm the narrator, and Jez is Randy, standing for Random Flunky. And Mick? We asked him to play Vladimir, but he said no. No one will ever accuse me of being stupid, Mick said, smirking. Bo kicked him yet again before cautiously turning his gaze back on the outfit. How in the name of the gods did this make it from the first Cavern Hall? Duncan scrounged it up. It must have gotten packed by accident, Jess said in all innocence, but he could see the laughter on her face and suspected its appearance was no accident. Bo sighed. They were only supposed to bring back useful things. I think it's being put to good use right now, Mick said. Bo barely resisted kicking him a fourth time. What about Duncan? What about him? Jez asked. Why can't he play Vladimir? Turns out Dunk's got amazing artistic skills. He's doing our backdrop and scenery. Don't tell me, Bo said. Somehow we found paints and things to paint on from what was brought over. Jez whistled innocently. Sometimes, he sighed. But that leaves you to be our Vlad. It's Vlad now? Well, that's what his siblings apparently call him, so that's what you'll get called to play, Rye said. Come on, Bo. You'll make a great Vlad. Or at least, she clarified, our version of him. He glanced again at the outfit like it might bite him. Fine, I'll do it. Rye let out a whoop while Jessie finally gave in to her laughter, sinking into the nearest chair. Jez grinned knowingly, making him squirm. But, he added sternly, there is one condition. Yes? I will wear that only during the actual play and not a moment before or after. Understood? All four present chorused their consent. Good. Then we have ourselves a deal. You should probably try it on at least once for size beforehand, Mick now said. There was a pause, then all three women burst into laughter. Jessie was wiping tears from her eyes at this point. Mick smirked, threw Bo a salute, and disappeared out the door. Bo dropped his face into his hands, not sure he'd ever been redder. What do I need to do for this play? We'll do it in a couple weeks. As soon as we're certain about the lines, we'll get them to you, and then we need to practice whenever we can squeak in some time. Wonderful. How do I let myself get talked into these things? Because you know you love us, Jess said, and gave him a hug. Thanks, she whispered in his ear. It made him smile. You're welcome. Rye opened her mouth, but this time she got kicked by Jessie. Ow, that hurt. Good. It was supposed to, Jessie said. Jess ducked her head, amused. It took 2 weeks of snatching practice time whenever possible before Jessie deemed them ready. They set an evening aside for it, and Duncan and his crew set up the main room all afternoon with a makeshift stage and backdrop. The actors rehearsed one more time and then split to put on their costumes. Bo had told them all they'd better not laugh and threatened a painful death if they did. Reardon went to the task as joyfully as he did anything, and even Mick was in a good mood, directing people to seats and spots in the room. Bo appeared with little time to spare, cheeks beet red. All three tried, rather unsuccessfully, to stifle laughter. Only Jez succeeded. I feel ridiculous. No, ridiculous doesn't even begin to cover it, he mumbled. I think you look great, Jez says. Yep, Rye said. Really shows off your muscles. Bo glared. She's right, you know. It shows off your assets really well. There was a pause as Jess seemed to realize what she said before blushing and quickly turning to head for the front of the stage. Rye trotted after her, snickering quietly. Jessie planted her hands on her hips and turned on Bo. You two are so incredibly unbelievable. Who? You and Jez. What about us? Either you're both blind, which I don't think I believe, or just too damn stubborn or too scared to admit it. This is a rather inappropriate conversation to be having when I'm dressed like this. No, I think it's the most appropriate time possible. God's breath, Bo, just say something. I think she's blind and you're scared. Bo looked away. I don't want to rush her into anything. It hasn't even been 6 months since Bri. As much as I love Bri and love Jez, and they were cute together, I suspect you and she were inevitable. You two understand each other on a level that's almost creepy. If you don't take the chance... I'm afraid. You're right. I'm afraid when this all comes to head... She's already scared to death we're all going to die. How much worse would it be if we were an item and I died? That's not your choice to make for her, Bo. Jez is a big girl. What's the point of denying something that everyone here can see? What you two have is already more than just plain friendship. You don't have to get lovey-dovey on us. In fact, please don't. But you still have to admit it. Of course, this is all ignoring the fact you've already slept together. Bo blushed. That was... I know, just teasing. Look, if there is... Whatever else she was going to say was cut off as Duncan took center stage. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our cast and give thanks to those who helped make this possible. First, Mick for his seating expertise and assistance in getting the captain to join the cast. No one will ever respect me after this, Bo muttered, as Mick acknowledged the applause with a briefly raised hand. Jessie tried not to laugh. Then the stage and artistic crew of Dove, Kilo, and Rich. Don't forget yourself, Kilo called from the audience. Duncan bowed. Thanks, Kilo. Now, on to the cast itself. Jez is playing Randy, our random administrative flunky. Jez stepped onto the stage and waved as people laughed, understanding the name. Then, Jessie's our narrator. She shot Bo a look that plainly spelled out that the conversation would continue, before slipping past Reardon and Riley to step on stage amidst yet more applause. Rye will be playing Anika Oplin, and Reardon Soren Dakamar. The pair stepped out on stage. Bo swallowed. And now, the person we've all been waiting for. He paused for dramatic effect. Bo as Vladimir Oplin. Bo slowly walked onto the stage, cheeks even redder than before, as he focused on Mick in the back. His old friend grinned and shot him a thumbs up. You're doing fine, Jez whispered in his ear. Early embarrassment faded. No one is laughing too hard. Gee, thanks. She chuckled. I try my best. The crowd finally settled down and they began the play. Each of the girls had taken a sibling and studied all the available information on them. Then they'd gotten together and over-exaggerated their personalities for the sake of comedy. Jessie took her place to the side of the stage and began. It opened with Anika whining about how bored she was and how everything was dull and why couldn't anyone be interesting. Jez, as Randy, bounded onto the stage and told her that her brothers wanted to talk to her. Anika flailed a bit and went to go after them, but instead tripped and fell off the stage in an exaggerated tangle of limbs. Randy gasped and ran from the room, returning, dragging Vlad, who was carrying a huge and obviously fake sword, and Soren, who appeared to be covered in ink, into the room. Vlad complained loudly of not having anyone to fight and almost sliced off Randy's head. Randy cowered while Soren read a book, talking in an extra-intelligent voice about made-up politics. Anika appeared just then, rather battered-looking due to her fall, and demanded her brothers make things less boring, twirling her hair around one finger. Soren grumbled about distractions from his precious books, while Vlad announced he was going on a crusade. Randy finally shook her head. I quit. The three siblings turned towards her, and all four froze. Those were 2 words the three were maybe a little too used to hearing, Jessie said with a wink. The actors quickly rearranged themselves during the resulting applause, and then scene 2 started with Randy skipping off into the sunset. Literally, Duncan painted a gorgeous sunset. The siblings carried on in similar fashions for a bit before Vlad struck a pose. My crusade begins now, he said, charging forward before slipping in an imaginary puddle of water and going down. Soren caught the sword and stared at it before ignoring his brother's troubles entirely and cursing about how the sword made it difficult to read. Then he wandered off towards the side of the stage where Vlad lay dead and slipped in the same puddle, going down. Nika now danced on a stage, spotted her two brothers, and burst out laughing. Finally, something interesting, she crowed. And so ends another typical day in Oakbridge, Jessie said, signaling the end of Jessie, Rye, and Jez's debut as amateur playwrights. The entire audience was doubled over in laughter. The cast took their bows. Most of the audience filtered out after, leaving Dunk, his crew, Mick, and the cast behind. Ren paced his room in a diamond from his bed to his couch, to the door of his old bedroom, to his chairs, and back to his bed. He tried to quash his worries about Annie and their plan or lack thereof. He wasn't sure when he'd started to care about Annie, but everything he told her earlier in the evening was true. He continued wearing a path in his rug as Vladimir barged into the room. Ren ignored him, because Vladimir would say what he wanted no matter what. "Rainier," he snapped. Ren sighed, stopped, and turned towards him. Yes? He'd expected a visit the moment Annie had mentioned that Vlad was worried about her. "What the hell are you doing to my sister?" "Nothing." "You're messing with her mind somehow, convincing her you care. I know you are." Ren's stomach clenched as the first spurs of anger flashed through him. "If I was messing with her mind, you'd know, since you listen to every gods-be-damned word I say. Believe me or not, but I do care. I don't know what tricks you nobles play." "God's breath, Vlad. The only one playing tricks or mind games here is Soren." With 2 quick strides, Vlad grabbed Ren by the collar, and with 2 more slammed him into the wall. "Do not speak ill of my brother or sister." Ren clenched his jaw against the spike of pain. "Soren will be the first to admit he plays mind games. I only speak the truth." "You weren't supposed to be this much trouble, Prince," he said, spitting the last word like a curse. "How much trouble can I possibly be outside your mind, General?" he said, giving it right back to him. Vlad froze, and Ren watched the storm break across his face. He knew full well he'd pushed the man farther than was safe with that one comment. But he also knew Vlad fairly well after 2 years. Vladimir Oblin occasionally needed to assert his dominance, prove he was stronger than Ren, and the quickest way for the older man to accomplish that was to pound on Ren a bit. He figured he'd be able to get a couple shots of his own off, which would make it worth it. What he didn't quite account for was Vlad's overwhelming fury. The first fist, which Ren tried to squirm and dodge, but still pinned against the wall, hit him square in the chest. The prince thought he heard something pop, but dismissed it as his imagination. He did, indeed, get a few good shots in, but went down much sooner than was comfortable. A few short years ago, he wouldn't have been caught dead in such bad shape, and he made a promise to himself to do what he could to exercise. Although, maybe it wasn't so much as his fitness as Vlad's rage. The last couple times, the beating had been controlled, purposeful as a method of teaching Ren a lesson. This time contained none of that control. Finally, Vlad looked down at him in disgust as Ren pushed himself carefully to a seat. "You really aren't much once we get past the words, are you?" Ren shrugged noncommittally as he took stock of his injuries. They were definitely worse than last time. The other man aimed a half-hearted kick at him, which Ren easily avoided. "You're despicable." He glared before turning and stalking out of the room. The prince shook himself as he got to his feet, careful not to put weight on the ankle that already throbbed. "Like you aren't," he muttered to the slammed door, wincing as his body protested. He made his way to his bed and collapsed on it, physically exhausted. Mentally, however, was another story, as he found it all but impossible to sleep, his mind racing. His worry for Annie came back threefold, combined with a swirl of other thoughts, from his conversation with Soren to what had just happened with Vlad. He couldn't believe it had been only a few hours since he and Annie had stood on the rampart. Eventually, though, he drifted off, lulled by the gentle sounds wafting through his now open window. Suddenly, he snapped awake, blinking in the dark as he tried to keep the dream he'd been having from slipping away. It took a time before his weary brain managed to pull it back up, and he realized it was a memory as much as a dream. A couple months before his mother's disappearance, his parents had asked him for a boy and girl name for a potential younger sibling. He felt a deep certainty that this potential younger brother would be Bo, after the name Ren had suggested, his parents' legacy to him. He scrambled upright, despite the pain it elicited, and grabbing a piece of paper and scrawled "Dear Bo" across the top. "Rennie," Annie sang as she pranced into his room 2 few hours later. He rolled over, blinking sleepingly at her. "Sit morning?" "It is. You look thrilled to see me this morning." He smiled crookedly. "Trust me, it's not you. I was up pretty late last night." He gave her a meaningful look, hoping she'd pick up on it. "Ah, silly Rennie," she said in an overly light voice. "Not getting enough sleep. Can I kiss it better?" "Kiss what? My sleepiness? I can try." "Sorry, just a long night last night." She pursed her lips. "Yes, it was, wasn't it?" Then she paused, grinned, and catapulted herself into his lap. "Hold me!" He grunted, wincing only a little, but she caught it immediately and slid off. "Why did that hurt?" she demanded, eyes narrowing. "Just a few bruises, nothing much." "Bruises?" she echoed, fear brightening her eyes. She glanced away for a split second, and when she looked up again, it was long gone. "Ah, my big brother was being protective. I'm sorry, Rennie, he shouldn't have hurt you." Now that he knew to look for it, he could see the force she put into speaking lightly, because even with the fear gone, other emotions weren't. She patted him on the head. "Sorry." "It's all right, Annie," he said, amused despite himself. "I'm sure I'll recover with a little time. Just watch the ribs for a few days, okay?" She eyed him. "They aren't broken, are they?" "What? No, not at all. Just bruised and uncomfortable." He tucked his injured ankle behind his other leg. "Can I see?" He stared. "See what?" "I want to see your bruised ribs." "So, in other words, you want to see my chest?" "Yep, Are you muscular? He'd said that Soren played the mind games, but this was an entirely different game altogether. He snorted, ignoring how it set his ribs on fire. I used to be. Doubt it anymore. I'm sure they haven't all vanished. Why don't we check? He sighed, knowing she was checking up on him. I'm not sure that's such a great idea. Why not? The bruises are kinda big. How big? Whole chest big? He pulled his shirt up, though. Ren, God's breath, I thought you said they were just bruised. Well, they are bruised. If they're that bruised, they're probably cracked or broken, she said with a scary note of authority. They'll heal. There isn't much you can do to help ribs, except take it easy. Annie studied him closely. Don't think I hadn't noticed the black eye either. What else are you hiding, Ren? Nothing. Rennie, she growled. Okay, so I wouldn't usually mind a role reversal, but do not try and change the subject. What else is hurt? She'd clearly given up on the act, definite concern radiating off her. He shifted his ankle further behind his good leg, but she noticed and looked at it meaningfully. Just twisted my ankle. You twisted it, or Vlad did? She sighed. Let me see it. It's nothing real. Rennie Highcastle, let me see it this instant, she ordered sharply. He shifted it and revealed it. God's breath, Ren, she breathed. That's way too big and looks awful. He glanced down at it. It's not that bad. She poked him in the side of the head, apparently the only space she deemed safe. Liar, we should get you to a doctor. I don't need a doctor. Fine, but I want Soren to at least look at you. Annie, he protested, don't move an inch. I'll be back in a minute. Annie! She disappeared out the door, which the guard shut behind her. Ren sighed, slumped a bit to take pressure off his ribs, and waited, having no other choice.